بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين محمد رسول الله صلى الله عليه وآله وصحبه وسلم تسليما كثيرا كثيرا أما بعد. My dear brothers and sisters, we are in the grip of a heat wave here in Massachusetts, and the temperature is 31 degrees Celsius. Now I can see my Hyderabadi friends laughing their heads off because a heat wave in Hyderabad means 46 degrees Celsius. But you are in whichever place you are. So I am sort of smiling to myself and saying that, well, if this is a heat wave, then alhamdulillah, that's good news. Having said that, when you step outside, the sun is extremely sharp. So you get very quickly sunburned, and if you are not wearing a nice large hat with a wide brim, then you end up getting a horrible headache, and it can be from mild to a severe sunstroke, even though the temperature is much less than in Hyderabad. And this is the other side of a pure atmosphere, an atmosphere that is not polluted. Because when the sun is coming at you through a thick blanket of smog, then it is less sharp. But here it comes straight at you, so the ultraviolet radiation is very high, and also the chances of a sunstroke. I almost had one the other day, but I was watering my garden, and it ended up almost having a sunstroke, but that didn't happen. The reason I'm telling you all of this is because of what I'm going to say now. It's not to tell you my life story here. And that is, in our session on Akhlaaq of the Ummati, what we talk about becomes real to us, and what we do not talk about becomes unreal, no matter how real or unreal either of these situations might be in reality. And the reason I mentioned to you this issue of the sun and whatnot, heat, is because global warming is a classic case in point. May Allah protect all of you. The chances of us suffering from, and may Allah protect us, perishing from global warming, the chances of facing severe difficulties in life and lifestyle and so on from global warming are much higher than perhaps the chances of us contracting this or that ailment or illness, including this COVID. That's the actual statistically valid reality. The chances of this happening, meaning perishing as a result of global warming, for our children and grandchildren is exponentially higher. Exponentially higher. But if I ask you, how aware are you of that? What is the answer? Another big crisis that is looming on the horizon, one of the most, I would say, reliable signs of that is that water is being traded on the stock exchange in California. It's a commodity. It's being treated as a commodity, and it's being traded along with gold and other commodities. And this is it's a sign of what is coming, which is a huge global crisis in water. Plain, simple, pure drinking water. As somebody said many years ago, that the wars of the future will be fought on because of and on water rather than for or on oil. May Allah protect us. We seem to be a people who can only think in terms of wars. We can't think in terms of sharing. We can't think in terms of conservation, and we call ourselves civilized. I mean, how incredibly ridiculous is that? But that is our reality. Now, having said all that, if I ask you this question and say, how many of us have installed water-saving taps in our homes and public buildings under our control? What is the answer? If I ask you how many of us have stopped using air conditioning unnecessarily, how many of us turn off lights, how many of us do not use cars unnecessarily and instead use public transport or walk? I'm happy to tell you that I do not have air conditioning in my house. I do not own a car. And I am notorious for turning off lights. And I use Uber or I walk. And I don't go out, unnecessarily. I'm severely allergic to shopping and malls and so on. Anyway, so the point I'm making is that it is possible to live a very happy and comfortable life without these things and contributing to a more positive world, even if you are the only one doing that. And alhamdulillah, I'm not the only one doing that. There are people today who are waking up. But the point is that if I ask all of you, whoever is listening to this, is attending this session and who is listening to this, do you do this? What is the answer? Now, the reason I'm saying that is, now I can go on, but we know the answers. Why do we do this? Even though I'm sure every one of you will accept what I'm saying, which is that we are facing a crisis of global warming, we are facing a water crisis. I don't think you will argue with that, and if you do argue with that, then there is enough data, inshallah, to convince you to accept this reality. But if we ask this question and say, how is this reality reflected in our lives? How is it reflected in how in the decisions we take, in how we choose to live our lives, in what we give priority to in our lives? If this question is asked, then what is the answer? And the reason, my contention is that the reason why this happens, the reason why we do not find in our lives actions that support our alleged commitment to reversing global warming and to alleviating the water crisis. Why is that not happening? Because we don't talk about it. We don't talk about it because it is not real for us. Now, we don't talk about it, we do not try to understand it, and so it is not a priority and we ignore it, imagining that by doing so it won't happen. But we know this is not true. It's not real for us. Allah knows it is very real, and it's the biggest danger that hangs over our collective heads. Yet we ignore it. Now the reason, again, as I'm saying all this to you, is of course to try to instill in you and to awaken in you a concern for the environment, a concern for our lives, a concern for the future of ourselves and our children, but also, most importantly, to draw your attention to another amazing thing which looms over us, which is completely and totally real, which has all the data in the world that we, you and I as believers, need to convince us that it is real. Yet, it seems that we also ignore that most of the time. And that is the Akhirah. And the Akhirah is not, again, real to us because it is something we do not talk about normally. Most of the time we have restricted it to mention in religious gatherings where we sit in a posture of respect, and that also depends on the culture of the place, because in America it's perfectly common to see people sitting with both legs extended towards the Qibla, extended towards the face of the speaker, so that the speaker understands his actual position. The biggest lacuna, the biggest gap, the biggest thing which is missing in our lives is adab, is respect. Anyway, and we listen to the speaker with our mind wandering elsewhere. And when all is said and done, we go home to our usual occupations and our usual lives. How many of us come out of a khutbah, come out of a lecture, which has spoken about the Akhirah? And believe me, this is standard. Every single lecturer, speaker, sheikh, imam, ustad, whatever you want to call the name, right? Will only speak about this. He will speak about the greatness of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. He will speak about Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam and the importance of following his sunnah, all of which leads to a good ending in the akhirah. So how many of us listen to such a lecture and we come out of there with a clear intention and then to make changes, and then we actually make changes in our schedules, in our priorities, in the use of our time, in our spending patterns, changes in our ethics and values, changes in our life goals. How many of us do that? Changes in behavior. For example, we might hear a hadith where Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam said that a smile is sadaqah. How many of us come out of such a lecture actually smiling and make it a point and an effort to smile at each other more? How many of us listen to this hadith which says that Rabbi sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, and such a within quotes dangerous hadith. Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam said that your iman is not complete. Now, what is the meaning of iman is not complete? If your iman is incomplete, then where are you headed? Right? Think about that. Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, and we know this hadith, he said that your iman is not complete until you want for your brother what you want for yourself. Right? Now, how many of us come out of a lecture where you heard this hadith and then actually look at yourself and look at your own decisions in life, look at how you treat people and say, am I treating my brother the way I would like to be treated? Am I treating my brother in the same way that I want others to treat me? Are we doing that? If you are not doing that, then believe me, that hadith which you heard has become a hujjah against you on the day of judgment, because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is going to ask you. And you cannot say, I didn't know. In any case, ignorance is not a defense in law. So, I don't know is not a valid point. But even if it was, even if you want to give that as an excuse to say, I did not know, in this case, you cannot say, I did not know, because you knew. Think about that. Right? Think about that. We come out from, we hear this hadith, your brother, your iman is not complete until you want for your brother what you want for yourself. But we come out of there and then we file a suit in the courts against our own brothers, against our own sisters. I know a case where a son filed a suit against his mother to get a share in his father's property. Right? Now, big question, why was he not getting a share in the first place? And secondly, if he wasn't getting a share, he's going to sue his brother, sue his mother, sue his sister to get a share in the property. You just heard what Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam said with regard to wanting for your brother what you want for yourself. But the suits and counter-suits continue. How many people come out of these gatherings and these halaqas and call their advocate, call their lawyer and say, cancel the suit, what Allah has written for me nobody can take. I am happy with what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given me, and I am going to, I want to cancel this suit. I do not want to sue my brother, I don't want to sue my sister or my mother or my father. How many do that? And if we don't do that, what does that tell us about the seriousness with which we take our religion? Now, I remember a case, people come to me for advice, and I tell people, don't ask me for advice, because for a lot of people, you won't like the advice I give you. So anyway, one person called me for advice, and he said, I'm very stressed out, I'm not able to sleep properly, and I'm really, seem to be in a bad way. I said, what happened? Why is all that? He said, there is this, I have sued my brother sued me about my father's property, and all of this is going on and so on. And I have lost my peace of mind. My relationship with my brother's family is destroyed. His children don't respect me. My children are in this way and that way, and a long story. So what shall I do? So I told him the usual thing. I said, don't ask me, because if I tell you, you won't like it, and more than likely you won't do it. So it's a waste of your time and my time. He said, no, Sheikh, please tell me, I promise you that I will follow it. I said, okay, alhamdulillah. I said, then very simple. I said, pick up the phone, call your advocate, call your lawyer, and tell him to withdraw the case. That's it. He said, oh, but then I will lose my share in my father's property. I said, yeah, sure. You will. I told him, I asked him, I said, tell me, are you on the street? I mean, is this father's property, if you don't get it, will you be without a roof over your head? He said, no, alhamdulillah, I have my own house, I live in my own house. It's very nice. I said, if you don't get that father's property, are you going to be without a meal? Are you going to be standing on a street corner with your hat in your hand asking for money? He said, no, of course not. He said, alhamdulillah, I've got a business, I've got work. So I said, then cancel the case. Withdraw the case. I said, what is yours, what is your qadar will come to you. What is not your qadar cannot come to you, case or no case. So withdraw the case. He didn't tell me whether he would do it or not. He said, thank you, and that was it. But very surprisingly, I was absolutely astonished. A month or two later, he called me and he said, Sheikh, I just want you to know, I took your advice and I withdrew the case. And he said, alhamdulillah, I have been sleeping so peacefully. I have got my peace of mind back. I am happy. And alhamdulillah, my relationship with my brother and his family is also improved. Now, if the case was something where the brother was being unjust, that is something for the brother to think about. But the point being that this is the reality, which is that the akhirah is something which is so important. The point I wanted to make to you was that when we listen to lectures and so on and so forth, how often and how easily does that translate into amal, into action? The truth of the matter is, belief without action is a lie. If I say I believe, but my actions do not support my belief, then I don't believe. As simple as that. Whatever it is. If I believe, for example, that a particular stock is going to do extremely well on the stock exchange, and I am in the, if I am trading in stocks and I don't buy that stock, then it means that I really don't believe that that stock was going to do well. Because if I really believe that this stock is going to shoot through the ceiling, through the roof, and it's going to multiply and give me exponential results, then why am I not investing in that stock? Same logic applies as far as the akhirah is concerned. My brothers and sisters, the fact of the matter is that it is action, and only action that counts. And only action yields results. Everything else is hot air. Do a test. Do this, test yourself. Keep a pad handy and write down what you talk about right through the day. Right? Don't change anything. If you're writing something and you don't like what you have written, don't change it. Just write down. You're just noting it, and this is for yourself only. You're not going to show it to anybody, so nothing to worry about. So don't change anything. No praise, no blame. Just record what happens in your life. And then analyze it to see what you mention most often and what occupies your attention, your energy, and your time. What is it that occupies this most of the time? Then ask yourself, what is your view about the effect of that in your life? Right? So what do you mention most of the time? Are you talking politics most of the time? This is what is happening in this country, that country. This is what is happening to these people or that people. What is it you're talking about? Is it politics? Is it more? Do you talk more about business, for example? How the stock exchange is doing, what business opportunities are there, and so on and so forth. Do you talk about other people, for example, right? backbiting people, slandering people? Is that what you do? We hope you don't, but we know this happens, yes? Most of our social life is comprised of that. Do you talk about disputes? When you approach knowledge, when you approach ilm, are you focused more on gathering more and more information, more and more data, or the amal on that, the application of that data, the application of that information in your life? Which one is more in your approach to deen, to religion? When you are talking about religion, when you're talking about a hadith, when you talk about the ayat of the Quran and so on and so forth, are you more focused on being on again on the you know the way to approach it in this way and that way? If it's ayat of the Quran, are you more focused on reciting or the rules of recitation, or are you more focused on applying what the ayat is teaching us? Again, I have to keep on making these justifications, but may Allah protect me from myself. It doesn't mean that you should recite wrongly, no. The point, which do you give more importance to? And don't say you give equal importance. There's no such thing as equal importance. When you're giving importance to something, automatically you are putting something else aside. Right? Many people come to me, asking questions about this or that masala, but hardly anyone ever comes and says, I am not able to get khushu in my salah, what must I do? Right? Tears don't come into my eyes when I think about the greatness and glory of Allah, what must I do? I can literally count on the fingers of one hand the people who asked me these questions. There are people there, alhamdulillah, but just literally 2 or 3 people in my whole life. Focus is everything. And that comes from what we give most attention to. So take this, do this test, keep this pad handy, write down, and at the end of the day, read it and see what was it that you were most concerned about on that day. And then think about it and say, what is the effect of this on my life? If I'm going to be watching COVID numbers all day, how will it affect my life? If I'm going to be watching what's happening in Palestine or what's happening elsewhere in terms of the oppression of Muslims, how is that going to affect me? If I'm going to be watching, CNBC or something all day, television, chat shows, or I'm watching, games or whatnot, what is the effect of that on my life? My brothers and sisters, this life can be very short or it can be very long, right? And really speaking, if you think about it, this life is actually very long, even though in Quranic terms we say it is very short, but we are talking about in short in the context of time. Labithna yawman aw ba'da yawm. How long did you stay? Kam labithum. How long did you stay? I stayed for a day or less than a day, or part of a day. This is the question and answer with the malaika. That's in the context of overall time. But if you think about that, a person has a lifespan of, say, 70 years, 75 years, that's a long time, right? 75 years. Now, it's too long to be spent living in a stupid way. It's something that is enough to ensure that if we live it intelligently and thoughtfully, and no matter what time you start, even if you start in the 74th year of a 75-year lifespan, that 1 year can make a huge, huge difference. Because, alhamdulillah, we are talking about the mercy and forgiveness of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and that is a matter of an instant. In an instant, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala can convert 70 years of disobedience into 70 years of ajr, 70 years worth of reward, because we make sincere tawbah, sincere istighfar to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and we turn towards Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentioned in Surah Al-Furqan, Allah said He will change the evil deed into a good deed. So something that you or I would have been punished for, normally speaking, will become something that we will be rewarded for. It doesn't mean that the evil was good. It just means that not only will Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wipe out the evil, but Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will give us a reward which will compensate or which will substitute the punishment that we would otherwise have got. How long did that take? How long does it take to say sorry to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? How long does it take to say sorry to whoever you wronged? Because remember, there are two aspects to this. One is huquq of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, huququllah, which we have to make istighfar and apologize to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for and make tawbah and turn towards Him, Jalla Jalaluhu. And the other one is huququl ibad, which is the rights of the people. And if we violated those rights, if you were rude to somebody, if you hurt somebody, if you attacked the honor of somebody, if you took away somebody's property, if you, depending on what it was, then Rasulullah said, Allah will not forgive until that person forgives. So what must we do? Go and apologize. Forget about your ego. Your ego will take you into Jahannam. The ego is nafs. And what did Allah say? Inna nafsa la ammaratum bisu illa ma rahima rabbi. In Surah Yusuf alayhi salam says, verily my nafs will take me only towards sin. Inna nafsa la ammaratum bisu illa ma rahima rabbi, except for the one on whom Allah has mercy. We ask Allah for His mercy. Forget the ego. Go apologize. Go say sorry. Make amends. Compensate. Restitution. Do all that. If after you have done all that, the other person still does not accept, the other person still says, I am sorry, I am not going to forgive you, then that is on them. Then inshallah you are free from blame, and that person must forgive for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. If they don't, then that's between them and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. You are free from that equation. But if you do not if you don't take the initiative, if you don't go and apologize, and apologizing, don't make the apology sound like you are doing an ihsan on that person. No. Be genuinely contrite, be genuinely apologetic, be genuinely sorry. Because you are sorry. If you don't do that, then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will not forgive you on the day of judgment. We ask Allah for protection from this, inshallah. Right? Changing life is very, very important. My brothers and sisters, seriously, you know how you can tell what is really important for us in your life? See what you are most stressed about. See what you are most stressed about. Then ask yourself if those things are worth stressing about. Somebody the other day made jokingly a comment, and they said कि जब बड़े खड़े हो जाते हैं तो छोटों के हाथ पैर ठंडे हो जाते हैं. He said when the bigs, when the powerful people, the big people, the senior people stand up, meaning when they take charge, then the others, the so-called small people, less powerful people and so on, their hands and feet become cold, meaning that they become powerless. So obvious question that came to my mind, and many of you would have heard the further reminder on that, is who is big and who is small? Right? Who is big and who is small? What is the criterion of judging that? What is the criterion of judging this bigness and smallness? Because it's okay to say when big people stand up and so on, but who is this big person? Is it somebody who has wealth and power and authority and so on in this dunya? Or is it somebody who is connected with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, who Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala loves? Somebody who is a wali of Allah, may Allah make us count us among His awliya, inshallah. Somebody who is someone who raises his hands and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala does not refuse his dua. Who is big? Right? Which one? Now I know the standard, Sunday school answer. I'm not interested in that. I'm saying, Is this what we really believe? And if it is something we really believe, then we have to ask ourselves, how come I'm not working to become one of the, within quotes, bigs? Right? Allah left the door open for everybody. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala left the door open for everyone. With regard to the Awliya of Allah, with regard to the favorite slaves of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, this is one of the words which is mistranslated everywhere. Awliya is translated as friends, friends of Allah. Allah has no friends. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is Bala and Balatar. Ta'ala Allahu al-amthal. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is over and above, greater and more magnificent than anything in His creation. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala does not resemble anything in His creation. And Allah said that Himself. لَيْثَ كَمِثْلِهِ شَيْءٌ. He is unlike anything in His creation. And unlike anything does not mean only in terms of shape, it means in every form, in every aspect. Friendship implies equity and equality between two individuals. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is not equal to anything. So what is the meaning of wali? Wali in the context of Allah. I mean, again, the word is a Arabic word. It has its own linguistic meaning, and then it has a theological, religious meaning. The word, for example, take salah, has a linguistic meaning, meaning dua, but it has a theological meaning, meaning the formal way in which we worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So if somebody says Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala made salah farz, so I am making dua, khalas, I don't have to pray, then subhanallah, it is, obviously the person is completely ignorant and is missing the point. So similarly, the word wali, the linguistic meaning is a very, very close and dear friend, protector, somebody who is, will be with you, behind you, who's got your back, so to speak, and somebody who is your confidant, somebody who is aware of and knows your deepest secrets, and those secrets are safe with this person. But when the same word is used for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, wali, and Allah used it Himself in the Quran, there it doesn't mean all of this, it just means a wali of Allah is the one who Allah loves, is Allah's favorite slave, who Allah will protect, whose dua Allah will accept. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala honored the human beings and honored the believers especially by saying that He is their wali. Allahu waliyul ladhina amanu. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the wali of the believers. يُخْرِجُهُمْ مِنَ الظُّلُمَاتِ إِلَى النُّورِ. And He extracts them from darkness into light, from misguidance into guidance, from Jahannam to Jannah. And He is the wali, Allahu waliyul ladhina amanu. In another place, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, Ala inna awliya Allahi la khawfun alayhim wa la hum yahzanun. Allah said, truly and surely, the awliya of Allah, awliya is the plural of wali. The awliya of Allah, the favorite slaves of Allah, are those for whom there is no sadness and there is no fear. La khawfun alayhim, there is no fear for them. Wa la hum yahzanun, and they have no sadness. There is nothing that they need to be concerned about in the future. And their past also has been forgiven, so there is nothing for them to be sad about in their past. And then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala described who are these awliya. الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا وَكَانُوا يَتَّقُونَ لَهُمُ الْبُشْرَى فِي الْحَيَاةِ الدُّنْيَا وَفِي الْآخِرَةِ. Allah said, these are the people who have iman and who have taqwa. And for them there is bashara, there is good news, fi dunya wa fil akhirah, in this dunya, in this life of this world, and in the hereafter, in the akhirah. So what is the definition of a wali? Somebody who has iman and somebody who has taqwa. Somebody who believes in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, in tawheed, who believes in Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, as the last and final messenger after whom there are no messengers, and someone who has taqwa, meaning somebody whose primary concern is Allah pleased with me? Somebody for whom the single point of decision making, the single criterion of decision making is, does this action or does this speech or does this decision of mine, is it likely to please Allah or not? And if it is likely to please Allah, alhamdulillah, I do it. If it is not likely to please Allah, then I do not do it. This is the definition of taqwa. So who is a wali? The one who has iman and the one who has taqwa. The one who believes and the one who is concerned about the pleasure of Allah, meaning the one who believes and then the one who molds and changes and does every speech and action of his in a way where he knows this will please Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, inshallah. So it is your belief and it is your life. Right? So the question is that what are we concerned about? Are we concerned about this? Am I a wali of Allah? If I am a wali of Allah, what must my earning be like? Can I be involved in interest-based banking and be a wali of Allah? Can I be buying and selling things which are haram? Can I be selling, for example, lottery tickets and alcohol and pork products and I don't know, all the khabasat, all the filth that Muslims insist on selling in their shops? And they believe shaitan because shaitan tells them that your business will sink unless you sell this stuff. La hawla quwwata illa billah. Where is the question of development? We haven't even decided in our lives, going by our actions, it looks like we haven't even decided who we want to believe. We want to believe shaitan or we want to believe Allah? If that itself is something we have not decided, then what's the good of talking about anything else? No? Think about that. What does it tell us? So if I want to be a wali of Allah, what must I do? I must clean up my act. I must earn halal. I must eat halal. I must fulfill the fara'id. I must have a belief in Tawheed. Right? This is what we need to look at. So ask yourself, what am I stressed about? And ask then yourself, are you stressed about the right things? Right? Are you stressed about the right things? Are those things worth stressing about? And the way to think, to judge that is to do it in the way where we decide in the corporate world. This is how we decide on the amount of compensation for senior officers in the company. The top management salaries are decided on this basis. That is, what is the cost of a mistake? If that top manager, sometimes people feel, why is it that a truck driver works so hard and the laborer works so hard, but the CEO gets so much more money? It's not because of working hard. It's not a cost of sweat. It's a cost of making a wrong decision. If a laborer makes a wrong decision, what happens? One brick less or more, right? It has its importance, no doubt. But when the CEO of a company makes a wrong decision, what happens is billions of dollars down the drain. And maybe many other kinds of losses. So that is why the CEO is paid more than the laborer, because the cost of mistake of a CEO is much more than the cost of mistake of a frontline worker. So do this test for your stress points and ask yourself, what if the thing that I worry about actually happens? What will happen? What is likely to be the result of that? What if I actually lose my job? What if someone close to me dies? What if the government of my country changes and a government that is hostile to me and my kind comes to power? What if I fail my career? If I fail my career exams, what if I fall sick with something incurable, like cancer or something? Maybe COVID. COVID is not incurable, but do this as a test, right? And ask yourself this question. We'll talk about this in more detail in the next session. But just now, do this thing as a test and say, what is the result of and what is the cost of all of this if it happens? Right? What are your stress points? What are you stressing about? And is it really worth stressing about those things? I ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to be pleased with you and never to be displeased. I ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to enable us to do that which is pleasing to Him and to live our lives in a way where He will be pleased with us. وصلى الله على نبي الكريم وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين برحمتك يا أرحم الراحمين والسلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته.